The attic floor groaned under his weight, thick with a decade of settled dust. Simo pushed aside a stack of rotting crates, his fingers brushing against a length of splintered wood. It was an old brush, the handle worn smooth, the bristles stiffened by layers of long-dried ink. He held it up to the sliver of light piercing the roof. There was no hesitation. He dipped the tip into a pool of shadow on the floorboards, pressed it against the white plaster of the wall, and pulled. A line of liquid gold bloomed in the wake of the bristles, glowing with a steady, hummed resonance. He traced the curve of a crusty loaf, rounding the edges, filling the center with a quick, deliberate motion. The wall shimmered. The air tasted suddenly of yeast and heat. With a soft, hollow pop, the drawing detached itself from the plaster. A steaming loaf of bread hit the wooden table with a dull thud. Simo reached out, his hand trembling as he touched the surface. It was warm. He pressed his palm against the crust, feeling the heat radiate through his skin. The impossible had just become real.
The heavy thud of a boot against the oak door shattered the silence.
Dust rained from the ceiling as the frame groaned under a massive, repeated impact. Simo did not look back at the table. He turned toward the rear window, his heart hammering against his ribs in time with the blows. He slammed the brush against the brick exterior, the golden ink bleeding into the mortar. He dragged the bristles down, curving them into rungs and rails, pulling a sturdy ladder into existence just as the wood of the door finally splintered inward.
Splinters flew across the kitchen. A heavy,
iron-tipped boot smashed through the gap. Simo lunged for the window, his fingers hooking onto the newly formed rungs. He felt the cold iron of the ladder vibrate as he threw his weight downward. Above him,
the room erupted in shouts. A hand grabbed at the air where he had been a second before. He vaulted over the sill,
his feet finding the bottom rung just as the door collapsed entirely. He hit the ground running, the golden ladder fading into mist behind him. He did not look back. He sprinted toward the tree line, the heavy, rhythmic thuds of pursuit echoing against the hard-packed earth behind his heels. The forest ended abruptly at the edge of a deep, churning river. The water roared, a violent, muddy torrent that cut off any hope of further flight on foot. Simo skidded to a halt, his chest heaving, his lungs burning from the sprint. Behind him, the shouts of the guards grew sharper, closer, the heavy thud of their pursuit vibrating through the roots beneath his feet. He looked at the water, then at the brush in his hand. His fingers were slick with sweat. He pressed the bristles against the surface of the rushing water, but the current dragged the tip away, nearly pulling the brush from his grasp. He lunged forward, ignoring the spray that soaked his skin, and forced the golden ink into the froth. He painted with jagged, desperate strokes, shaping a hull and a sturdy bow. The water beneath the drawing began to coil and solidify. A boat surged to life, rising from the riverbed with a spray of white foam. Just as a guard reached out, fingers clawing at the air inches from his back, Simo vaulted over the bank. He landed hard on the wooden planks of the vessel. The boat rocked violently, throwing him against the side, but it caught the current instantly, tearing away from the shore and leaving the reaching hands of the guards grasping at empty space. The river surged, carrying the boat further into the dark thicket of the forest. Simo knelt on the deck, the wood vibrating beneath him as the current battered the hull. He watched the riverbank, waiting for the flash of armor or the sound of a shout, but the woods remained silent. The village was gone, swallowed by the twisting path of the water. He still held the brush, but his grip was cramping, his knuckles white against the handle. He needed speed to outrun the search party. He dipped the brush into the river, the ink bleeding out as he swept it across the flat wooden surface of the boat. Two long, curved shapes emerged from the grain of the planks. Oars. He grabbed them,
the wood rough and solid under his palms. He dug the blades into the rushing water, pulling back with every ounce of his remaining strength. His shoulders ached and his lungs protested.
But the boat cut faster through the foam. He pulled until the rhythm became a blur, his breath hitching in ragged gasps.
The sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in deep purples and oranges.
As the last light faded, the river widened, and he drifted into the quiet, leaving the pursuit far behind. The river carried him to a jagged opening in the cliffside. Simo steered the boat toward the dark gap, stepping onto the solid rock of the cave floor as the current swept the vessel away.
The air inside was biting, thick with the smell of wet stone and ancient dust. He shivered,
his limbs heavy with the strain of the day. He found a flat section of the wall, but it was slick with condensation. He wiped the surface dry with his forearm, his movements slow and deliberate. He pressed the brush to the stone, tracing the shape of a hearth. The ink clung to the rock, glowing with a soft, pulsing light. He finished the final stroke, and the room ignited. Orange flames roared into existence in the center of the floor, casting long, dancing shadows against the jagged ceiling. The heat radiated outward, thawing his skin and drying his damp breath. He walked to the edge of the fire, the warmth washing over him. He sat, the stone beneath him becoming comfortable, and placed the brush carefully against the earth. He watched the light flicker against the walls, his gaze steady. He had escaped the reach of those who hunted him. He would paint a better world tomorrow.